and welcome to the Average Joe and Pugs vlog, or as I'm going to call it for this week, Armchair Athlete.
Armchair Athlete?
Armchair Athlete.
Okay.
It sounds good, sounds sexy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it feels good.
We are in a house, unlike an apartment like the last time.
That is very, very true.
You're in your vlogosphere.
This is my vlog. Well, this is Vlogosphere 2.0. My actual Vlogosphere is downstairs, but it's dirty downstairs, and the ladies are downstairs, so we're going to let them do their thing down there while we talk our sports thing upstairs. Introductions, I am Deshaun Halley, also known as The Average Joe.
I'm James, also known as Pug on Pug's Lots in the Doghouse, and we are following up on, I guess, the football review after doing the football week.
A very belated football review. The Super Bowl, and we decided to wait,
Well, the Seahawks threw us off.
That's true.
We originally were going to do it in January, and the Seahawks threw it off, and then you had rehearsal.
Exactly. And, that's just the way things work. But enough about theater. You came here to talk about sports, so let's get it.
Well, let's start with the trophy you won.
Oh, yes. This is my fantasy football trophy here. This is from my league, Seattle Fans for the Win, or FTW as it's also called. My team, the Saskatchewan Sexy Timers, out of Regina, Saskatchewan. That is an R, ladies and gentlemen, not a V. Pay attention. Do your homework. And we started out really slow. We were 0-3 going into the first 3 weeks. Man, I was really, really bummed about it because my girlfriend happens to be in fantasy. That is actually something I wasn't supposed to tell you, but it's okay now. She participated in her first season of fantasy. She actually finished second place in her half of the division, but because of how they figure out the playoffs and whatnot, she got bumped out of the playoff spot. She was really, really bummed about it, but that's okay. For someone who didn't know what she was doing, she actually did a really, really good job.
Well, it could be worse. First time I ever did fantasy football, I got into I pulled an upset. I was the 4th seed in the playoffs and went to the championship game and lost to my girlfriend by 1 point.
And she never let you live it down, did she?
She was okay with it. It was more of a mutual respecting. A lot of people thought I helped her, but I did not.
Yeah, I gave my girlfriend very, very little help. I mean, she would say,
"Well, you didn't want her to beat you."
Well, no, it wasn't. Well, I told her I would help her with every game unless she's playing me, and I will not help you beat me because that's not fair, and I want to beat you, plain and simple. She beat me 1 week, and I beat her the second go around, and didn't have to face her at all in the playoffs, so it all worked out. It's fine. So Saskatchewan Sexy Timers,
congratulations,
good times, and I actually played. No, I had Sebastian Janikowski in that league. All my other leagues, I did not get him in a fantasy. Hey, listen, when we talk about the Raiders later, you're going to find out why Sebastian Janikowski is my own personal MVP. We'll get to that one later. But on to college football. We're going to start out with a little Huskies in review here. I'm going to just jump into it. They finished with a record of 7-6 overall, 5-4 in the Pac-12, which kind of puts them in neutral because they finished 7-6 last year, but they needed the bowl game to get win number 7. No, they didn't.
That was 2 years ago.
That was 2 years ago. My apologies. But I mean, it's again now we're in that awkward spot where we're stuck in neutral. We didn't take a step forward, and we definitely did not take a step back.
Well, and to add on to that, I know we're going to talk about Steve Sarkisian's seat, whether or not it's warm, cold, all the above. I feel that Sarkisian at this point is kind of pulling a Pete Carroll with what the Seahawks experienced in his first 2 years as coach, whereas they pulled a very good string of games and a very good half of the season. But we have yet to see a full season for with the Dogs. They're not. I mean, for the most part, I thought they won the games that they were supposed to win. They lost the games that they were supposed to lose, with the exception of the Arizona game and the Apple Cup. And kind of I was reviewing our predictions at the beginning of the season. Both of us had Washington in 3rd. They actually finished in 4th in the north of the Pac-12.
That loss to Washington State really kind of put the final nail in the coffin, having them finish 4th in the north half of the conference. And I mean, it's one of those things where with the Dogs, I had noticed they had times when they were playing really, really good teams, LSU aside, obviously, they were definitely up and ready to play the game for 4 straight quarters of knock 'em sock 'em football. But there was times where they played teams that weren't as good, and where teams that they definitely should have beaten, like Arizona. Mm-hmm. It it was really hard for them to, for some reason, get up for those games, and that's always a problem. And I had said, especially for Apple Cup, especially that UW needed to put their foot on their necks and not let up. And unfortunately, they played 2 great quarters of football. Third and fourth quarter, they just didn't show up. And I give Wazoo all the credit in the world. You saw an advantage, and you took it just like a little brother is supposed to, and beat us. I mean, there's nothing you can do. You give up 18 points, you deserve to lose that game. You do. You can't give up 18 points, man. You just can't do it.
Well, actually, the thing that bugged me about Apple Cup this year is that it was on a Friday.
That's just the way the Pac-12 schedules it. And,
I know, but I mean, well, what was interesting is I was following it because I was actually working at the time for the Apple Cup, and I was, and I think the Huskies were up. It was something. I want to say 28-13 or something along those lines. It was in the first half. Yeah, they were up 28-10. They were up 28-10 going in the third quarter. And next thing you know, I take a nap. I wake up and the game's in OT, and I see Wazoo has the ball and they scored. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, since they scored, the Huskies have an opportunity. But then you called me and said that's why we call it Apple Cup. Well, aren't we supposed to get the ball? But then again, like I said, I unfortunately missed the game. But when it comes to playing to their opponent, I also think that maybe that the clink also played a role in the home field advantage and playing to their opponents.
Like a home away from home advantage. When
well,
you think about it. There's a 3-mile difference from where Husky Stadium actually is on the campus of University of Washington and where CenturyLink Field is in downtown Seattle. So it's driving-wise, it's a grand total of 15 minutes when there's no traffic.
Yes, and you can find parking.
Yes.
Well, and that
also very true.
Well, that also being said, I mean, I felt that throughout the second half of the season, when we began that streak where we took down, I think it was I'll look it up here, but I believe not in this order, but they took down Colorado. I believe Arizona State. Let's see if I can. I'm sorry, I'm delaying this. Utah. They won against Cal, so Cal is still overrated. And I felt like when they were going through that stretch, what really scared me going into Apple Cup is they were ranked 25th in the nation. Now
they were ranked twice this season.
Yeah,
and both times they completely failed.
Well, the first time they were ranked. They actually took down Colorado 38-3.
Right.
Yeah, and then the second time they lost to Wazoo, and I don't know what it is, but every single time the Dogs have been ranked during the Sarkisian year, when I see that number in front of the name, I just get incredibly nervous.
It's totally worth it actually being concerned. I mean, we all love it when our teams are ranked. But
I love it when these boys are ranked.
Hey, most definitely. And and I took great pride in us being ranked. I was like, 24, 25. That's about where I thought we would end up if we had a better season. If things just kind of been chugging along in the way that had been. It helped that both Stanford and Oregon State were in fact ranked, and also helped that we were playing them at home. And I mean, the Dogs, as we know, are not the biggest road warriors on the face of the planet. They're just not. And so I was very thankful to have 2 top 10 ranked teams at CenturyLink Field. I felt more at ease. I was like, well, if we lose a game, then it's no big deal. But at the same time, we get up at home.
And I think that's definitely something that Stark's crew has to look at with the season going forward. Also, to add to the toughness of the schedule, USC did beat the Huskies at home. They were ranked 11th at the time, so there you go. You get another top 25.
Yeah, exactly.
The LSU game, I mean,
the LSU game was just, it was, and we all knew going in that was going to be a complete and total wash.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just LSU is just a far superior team than University of Washington. I mean, and I hate to give the SEC credit. I absolutely hate it. It just burns me because they get too much press. They get the benefit of the doubt a lot, but the SEC teams are in fact better than most teams in the country. They've got now 6 national titles to prove in the BCS era. So I mean, again, big props for that. But at the same time, I still think you guys aren't as good as advertised a lot of times. Just say.
Well, I mean, again, this
Boise State knows that.
Well, again, we can go on and talk more about the SEC ad nauseum being up there, but it just goes to show you that we really will never know who is the top conference until they put in a playoff system of some sort.
Well, of course,
you know,
and
which is coming.
2015.
Yeah.
So we got that to look forward to, and I'll take 4 teams. That's fine.
I would prefer 16. I read Death to the BCS. I agree with it. I think
I actually do need to check that book out. Actually.
Yeah.
I just haven't gotten around to reading it.
Yeah, but well, it's going to be a little different now because of the super conferences.
Right.
You know, because when it was written, you had the Pac-10, the Big 10, and that had 10 teams, and the Big 12 that had 12 teams. And,
Big 10 actually had 11 teams.
Oh, really?
Penn State was the 11th team.
How funny.
And if you looked at the logo at the time, if you looked close enough, there's actually a 1 because it starts at the T in 10 and then it goes down. It's really funny. Anyway, we digress.
Well, one of the games that we said that was a very key win was is the Arizona game, and this unfortunately was the one game that I was able to watch from beginning to end, and they looked absolutely. The Huskies looked.
They came out completely and totally flat. I mean, I'm not saying that Arizona was necessarily a great team. I just felt that they were a team that definitely did their homework, and they put Keith Price in a lot of high pressure situations, which he has shown this season that he wasn't able to handle them as well. But it was definitely a matter of 2 teams. One did their homework and studied, and one just looked completely outmatched. Unfortunately, it was the Dogs that looked absolutely outmatched. I think they get that win, and I think the whole season just kind of falls into place. But again, that's why everything looks great on paper.
Everything.
That's my favorite. It's my favorite thing in the entire world because, I mean, preseason rankings when they come out, it's like, oh yeah, so-and-so's ranked number 1, this team's ranked number 2, this team's ranked number 3. You go, by the 6th week, all this is going to change. Mm-hmm. You know, that's just the way it is because certain wins count more than other wins and so on and so forth. And, it's just, everything looks fine on paper, and that's why you have to play every single game for 4 quarters. And when the clock is 0, what the final score is what the final score is.
Well, and that actually leads into a segue about Keith Price, with his sophomore slump, mind you.
Definitely.
And like I said on camera, when you said you were going to love what I'm about to say right now. give my boy some love. Oh,
give him some love, James.
All right. So, if you have watched previous entries of my blog, I have been very hard on Jake Locker.
He is not a fan of the man we call Motley Jake. He is not a part of the fan club, ladies and gentlemen. Not a part of the fan club.
Well, and if you go, I think if you watch the first video that I filmed about Jake Locker, I think you can understand where I'm coming from. Now that being said, there are sportscasters who in Seattle, like KJR and ESPN Seattle, that are not necessarily haters, but they can also see where the other side is coming from with Jake Locker.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not. I mean, it's.
Well, I mean, but again, when you work for the big radio stations, you have to play both sides of the line. You can't necessarily be a homer like Softy. I love the guy to death, but he's a homer.
Well,
big homer.
He plays a role. He plays a role.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that. All right. So what I did is, while Keith Price was going through the slump, I kept saying, well, how could Keith Price be going through, this big, sophomore slump? He's a pass first, run second quarterback, unlike Jake Locker. So what I did is I compared Keith Price's second full season as a starter to Jake Locker's second full season as a starter. Right. So if you look at Locker's stats, and the reason why I did this is just to kind of get an idea of how big Keith Price's slump was. I'm not saying, like Jake Locker's here or Keith Price is here or anything. I'm just to give our viewers an idea of what the sophomore slump was like. So if you looked at Jake Locker's stats, this would be his 3rd year with the Huskies, because I didn't count his 2nd year because that was the 0-12 year, and he got hurt.
Yeah,
so
I knocked
him
out the Oregon State.
Yeah, and I didn't count the one time when Keith Price stepped in for Locker as a freshman during Locker's final year. So these are their second full season as a starter. So what I thought was interesting in the passing category, okay, so Keith Price for the season was 242 for 362 passes. That was good for 66.9%, which is about what I expected, pass score. Okay. Locker, he edged out Locker. Locker was 230 for 394 for 58.4%. So I thought, okay, Keith Price. Okay, here's the other stat that favors Keith Price. He threw for 3,063 yards. Jake Locker in his second full year threw for 2,800. Now, here's where it gets incredibly interesting, and where you just think, well, wait a minute, how does a pass first, run second quarterback not have more of these stats?
Right.
So Keith Price, this last year, he averaged 6.3 yards per pass. Locker, a run-first quarterback, in his second full year, averaged 7.1 yards per pass.
6.3 to 7.1, you're talking a yard and some change.
But still, Locker wasn't known as a thrower.
Well, no, he wasn't known as a thrower, but the throws that he did make were, I want to say they were 30-plus yards. Because again, as we all saw when Locker was playing, he had a cannon for an arm. He just lacked touch. And ironically, he couldn't, for some reason, he couldn't get the pass.
I'm looking for the ball.
Between 5 and 15 yards.
Yeah.
Which is actually ironically is what Keith Price is actually good at. Again, when you've got a tight end like Austin Sperry and Jenkins, going across the middle, that's a big target.
Well, yeah, too. But I just thought it was interesting in the sense that Locker was known as keeping. If you couldn't find somebody, scramble out of the pocket, and then
I mean, that was just a part of the skill set,
right?
And again, a lot of people go, well, they look at running quarterbacks, especially in the NFL. They go, well, all they know how to do is run. Well, that's not their fault. You have to blame their high school coaches. And when you play high school football, you're generally running a single wing team. Everybody's is equally fast. So if you don't necessarily have a quarterback who can throw a whole lot, but has still got a decent 40 time, where you're going to go, oh, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to basically run the ball. For dink and dunk, and run the ball down the field. So, I mean, as a quarterback going in, if that's all you know going into college, it's a rough adjustment. And the University of Washington, when they recruited him, they knew that going in. So I mean,
well, he was a tight end, right? Was he a tight end going into?
No, he played quarterback. He was a cornerback.
Well, I know he was a quarterback at
I think he played.
Wasn't he recruited as a tight end?
He might have been.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure. He's big enough to be one.
Well, I just thought it was interesting. So would you say that Keith Price and Locker would probably be on the same playing field in this particular?
I do think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then let me ask you this. Now, Keith Price set a school record in his sophomore year.
Redshirt
30.
freshman. No, it wasn't redshirt.
So
sophomore year.
So not last year, but the year before, his first full year, he threw 33 touchdowns.
Right.
He threw 19 touchdowns this year, and that's actually too short of what Locker threw in his second season. So would you say the same thing for?
A lot of that has to do with defenses figuring out. When you have a new quarterback, teams are they're so busy trying to find out what the weaknesses are so that they can actually attack them. And for a lot of people, now they say normally it takes 2 to 4 games to do, but really ultimately it comes down to, in the college game, it takes an entire season because you want to look at said quarterback's full body of work. That way you're able to see what he does on first down, what he does on third down, third and short, third and long, second and 8 versus, second and 3, and things like that. So, I mean, a lot of that, I expected a slight dip in his touchdown to interception ratio stat. Okay. Just because teams figured out that if you put him under enough pressure and you take out the exit valve, because, I mean, he is a run-second guy, but he's also very, very good at the naked bootleg, both to the left and to the right, which is weird because when you are a right-handed quarterback, you want the bootleg to the same side that you're throwing to generally. But he was able to do it going both ways. So what they wound up doing a lot was closing off both sides of the edge, and also using the disadvantage of having a slightly smaller offensive line. Because again, mobile quarterback, you got to have an offensive line to keep up with them. So I mean, naturally, you're going to have a slightly smaller line. It just size wise. So eventually you wound up putting Keith Price into situations where he had to not necessarily make snap judgments, but deviate off of his passing routes. Which ironically, most times it was if his first receiver wasn't open, find Austin Sperry and Jenkins. Teams picked up on that. They started double and triple team him, and not giving, but also covering that first receiver. So eventually he had to throw it away, or he had to basically take the sack. Both, because again, if it's not first down, you got 3 more downs. Take the sack, it's fine, or throw the ball away. You got 3 more downs to get it done.
Well, that's something that we talked about at the beginning of the season too, and it seems that Keith Price is still struggling with getting rid of the ball.
Yes.
And that also being said, kind of with
getting rid of the ball smartly. There are times where it looked like he was throwing it out of bounds, but the ball would stay in bounds, and I'm going, no! And again, that's why his interceptions went up. And I mean, I think average for a quarterback, you're going to throw at least 5 interceptions in a season. I mean,
right.
So I mean,
unless you're Brett Favre that one year where
right.
with the Jets when he went on this major this. Well, was it was on the Jets the first year with the Vikings when he had this really bizarre touchdown interception
22
ratio.
Touchdowns to 7 interceptions.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
so I mean, it's just one of those things where I think a quarterback, and it's always there's a huge learning curve because it's one of those things you either have it or you don't. Mm-hmm. That eye of seeing your progressions and seeing said situations, and then making that decision of, all right, no one's open, I can't get upfield, let's just throw the ball away, let's do it again. And those are snap decisions. I mean, you have to figure out if it's the right decision.
Well, I guess Joe, but this also leads me to a question that I have, and I kind of to get back to the whole Locker and Price comparison. Mm-hmm. What I find very, very odd is that Locker had a worse team mm-hmm. around him compared to Keith Price, which is that's fine.
Yeah.
The problem that I have is he still Price had a very, very shaky offensive line, like mm-hmm. Jake Locker, and he also had some injuries, like Jake Locker.
Yes.
So why are the Husky faithful being harder on Keith Price than they are Jake Locker?
I don't get
that.
think a lot of it has to do with the fact that when Jake came in, he was being considered as the savior of Husky football. That's what he was kind of touted as. They had big campaigns, modeling Jake and so on and so forth. But I think also with Keith Price, he was definitely an unknown coming in, and he had such a great season, in his first full season as quarterback that people just thought that he was going to shoot up like a rocket and be the greatest thing. I mean, he was a Heisman hopeful at the beginning of the season mm-hmm. and things like that. I mean, it's just it's tough because we as fans, we wear our heart and our emotions on our sleeve, and for a lot of even the most faithful fans, it's either we're really, really high on somebody or we're really, really low on somebody. It's never, looking at the full body mm-hmm. of work. And I mean, I knew that Keith Price was I didn't figure he was going to have this bad of a sophomore slump, but I knew it was going to be there. It's like, he's not going to throw 31 touchdowns. He's not going to. Mm-hmm. His interceptions were going to go up a little bit. I just, and when Jake Locker came in, I was like, you have to prove to me that you are worth my time to defend. And there were times where Jake Locker did, but there were more times when Jake Locker didn't. And I mean, I told everybody 1.5 million times that he's got the big cannon for an arm. He does, and it's great. But if you don't have the touch, you're not going to get anywhere with it.
Right, right. Well, and I guess so looking into next year, so Keith Price has a really good year, a bad year. Mm-hmm. Now it's time to bounce back and try to lead the Huskies to at least what I have for expectations next year: 8 wins, bowl win, and you have to win Apple Cup.
Definitely. Well, I mean, Keith Price won Apple Cup the previous year, so I mean, it's not like he's 0-2 going into Apple Cup. I mean, and if you want to look at it in comparison from home game to away game, he's 1-0 at home, he's 0-1 away.
Yeah. However, you also actually, this is a great segue into Sark's conversation, mm-hmm. and is the fact that if you win Apple Cup, it's kind of like a contract extension, and it's kind of like so. I don't know, maybe, just maybe that this could be a position battle competition. I mean, depending.
Oh,
on
definitely.
The
You know, they've got some definite recruits. I didn't catch all the people that they actually got signed, so I couldn't tell you offhand. But it's I'm just getting buzzed all over the place. But you know, I definitely think, you know, and in the spring, I think there should be a healthy quarterback competition. If I were a coach, I would just say the quarterback position is open every year. You know, it's a strange way to look at it, because, I mean, ultimately, the fans and the school and the team knows who the starting quarterback is going to be. Now, barring injury, getting kicked off the team for, random violations and so on and so forth, the starter is going to be Keith Price. But I wouldn't be too surprised if Sark says, you know what, we're just going to see what happens, and I will let you know 2 weeks before the season starts.
That can be a very dangerous thing.
It can.
I mean, Eric Wedge is known for that, for just saying, not to bring up baseball in these football weeks again.
That's fine.
But Eric Wedge from the Mariners has done an unbelievable job of letting veterans hang themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Milton Bradley, Sean Figgins. Now, looking into this season, people are kind of thinking, is he doing it with Justin Smoke? And people are thinking, is this a good thing, because like Smoke and Keith Price, they're both very, very young players, and they're still very impressionable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's incredibly scary.
No, definitely. I mean, you obviously you just have to let, if a wise coach goes to the starter and say, hey, you know what, you're still my guy, but I'm going to open up the competition. I want to see how well you're going to be, with a little bit of heat on your back. Again, come to the beginning of the season, it's still your team. You've earned the right to have that spot. Just let them know, hey, just going to open it up a little bit.
So be upfront with them.
Be upfront, yeah. And there's no need to hide the fact, because again, the team knows, the school knows, the fans know. Again, barring all the the hypotheses that I just mentioned, again, Keith Price is going to be a starter going into next year. Now, it would be one thing if Nick Montana were still here, and I go, well, maybe you might want to give the son of Joe Montana a shot, but
he's not here anymore.
He's not here.
Yeah.
No, he's at Tulane.
Well, actually, that goes into Sark's seat.
Mm-hmm.
So let's discuss Sark's seats. You said after Apple Cup that it's a little warm.
It's a smidgen warm, just because, again, Apple Cup is it's the game, and ironically, again, rivalry games. All rivalry games are like this. You throw all the records out going into your rivalry game, and you have to win these games. And for a lot of teams in a lot of different conferences, coaches have been fired despite having great seasons for losing to their cross-state or cross-town rival. This it's a big deal, and and it's not so much the fact that we lost Apple Cup to Wazoo. Like, it'd be one thing if the game has been the lead has only been up by 3 for both teams the entire game, and we're really goofy play, flea flicker, touchdown. Okay, it was still a good game. Both teams fought hard. But this was a season where, Wazoo was not all that great at all for the entire season. They didn't really do a whole lot of anything special, except for their place kicker kicked a 60-yard field goal.
I remember that.
And it was Sebastian Janikowski-esque. I'm just gonna call it. It was right down the pipe. It wasn't like one of those that they kind of had to arc it in. No, it was straight, true, right down the middle. I was like, you know what? Get it, boy. Get it.
Well, see, I actually think that it's a lot warmer than what you say. You said it's a little warm.
Yeah.
For me, I think, like, me personally, I'm in the same boat as you in terms of it's a little warm. Here's the problem, though. This will be Sark's 5th year as the coach.
Right.
His all-time record, if you include the bowl games, 26-25.
One game over 500.
Yeah. Now, granted, we went through 08. We went through the Willingham area. We went from a national powerhouse down to here, which is. So I would much rather be in the situation that we're in now. We're competitive.
Mm-hmm.
We have a chance to win every game. There are some games where we just, like the LSU game this year, just said, okay, we're probably going to lose this game. But for the most part, we're competitive. We're in the games. The play calling has been better.
Mm-hmm.
The coaching is way better than what it is. So I give Sark a lot of props in that regard. But if we're going to take the next step, we're starting to get to the point where we're not seeing progression in terms of wins.
Yes.
We were 5-7 his first year,
Mhm.
6-6 in the regular season. I don't count bowl games.
Right.
We were 7-5 the third year, and this last year we were 7-5 before we lost to Boise in the bowl
Right.
game. So we haven't shown progression yet.
Yes.
And
we're exactly where we are. We're neutral.
And another thing that I think that that makes Sark's seat a little hotter is people kept saying when he was first hired, but then again they did this for Willingham, so I mean take this with a grain of salt. People said that the Huskies are going to have a top 25, top 15 recruiting class. Well, now we have all of the boys.
Yeah.
And now it's really time to show, that we can make that next step and we can get that 8 win.
Right.
Because I think
win number 8 should have happened at Apple Cup. It should have happened,
but it did it.
And it did.
It did.
And I was hoping that it would happen against Boise State in the bowl game, but again,
that doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
Yeah, it's a postseason game.
Yeah, it's a postseason game, but I mean, again, it goes on their overall record, which, again, let's applaud mediocrity, yay. But, I mean, don't get me started on applauding mediocrity. Anyway, 6-6 doesn't get it done. I don't care what you say.
You did that in the last bit.
Doesn't get done. But, I mean, it's, I could see, how, we the fans, and maybe even the athletic director maybe having some semblance of second thoughts. I mean, again, you can't, I wouldn't necessarily fire a coach for having a 7-6 season. I mean, again, finished over 500, you made it to a bowl game, so contractually, you've done everything you're supposed to do. Again, would we have liked to win against Boise State? Yes, we would have. But, again, ultimately, it comes down to the product that's being played on the field. If your team, if you coach your boys to play 4 quarters of football, and they only give you 2.5, that's not entirely the coach's fault. A lot of that has to fall on the players as well. I mean, again, looking at the old 12 season, I was like, by week 5, I could just see that the team as a whole had just given up. They were like, we're just going to throw the season away, and we'll try to get it back in Apple Cup, and if we win Apple Cup, everything will be great. Which I'm glad. That's why I'm glad we didn't win.
Well, you weren't glad that day.
No, I wasn't glad that day. But I was like, okay, we didn't win. All right.
Well, I can see that, but the thing that's very interesting about football compared to other sports is, you can, with other sports like baseball and hockey and that type of deal, you can finish with a losing record, but if you win 5-6 more games than you did the previous year,
right,
it's kind of looked at as an improvement.
Right.
Whereas in football, you must get that extra win somewhere. And if you don't,
well, the season is short.
Oh, I get that.
162 games in baseball, 82 games in a full season of hockey.
And basketball.
And basketball.
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying, that the season's longer or anything. It's just, it's so hard to show progression.
Yeah,
and right now, Sark was on an exponential function, and now he's just kind of on this late. Yeah. So I mean, looking at his overall record of 26-25, I personally think that his seat is like where you say it's a little warm. Got to win Apple Cup next year for sure.
Definitely.
But I do think it is a little hotter than people are giving it credit for.
He does have to prove that the team can dominate on a consistent enough basis. If I could see more games like Colorado, where it was just like they're just steamrolling people, yeah, I will feel a lot more confident. Now, when I say, I'm talking about the team being competitive for 4 quarters. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, if you look at just going to miss field goals, that happens. That's no big deal. And, that's what I want to see. I want to see a team that is competitive. If you lose by 7, that's still a good game. That's a loss I'll take because, again, you're battling out there.
Yeah. It's a one-possession game.
It's a one-possession game, and you know what? That makes it a 50-50 game. And that's what I want to see. I want to see us playing at 100% all the time for 60 minutes. That's what I want to see.
So that's your expectations for next year?
That is my expectation, and actually, I have played 4 quarters of football in all caps because that was one of the main deciding factors for the Dogs. Especially, again, I'm going to harp on Apple Cup because it still sticks in my craw in the way in which we lost. The defense gave up on the game, thinking we could just kind of just slide, glide, just do whatever we want. It's cool. We're ahead by 18 points. They're not going to come back. We just got to make a few stops here and there, and everything will be fine. Wrong. Arizona and playing against Arizona, it was like you didn't come out to play at all on both sides of the ball. You let a team that you were definitely statistically better than outmatch you. And those things cannot happen. Again, that's 2 wins on the board that we left on the field. We actually with those 2 wins we would have 9 wins.
Well, and to add on to that as well, I think that
I did think USC was a winnable game too.
Yeah, but I also think our non-conference season the non-conference season's general portion of the schedule has been incredibly light.
It's because they get that one FCS school now, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the FCS teams are bad or anything. It's just I think again the level of competition isn't all that great. Now, granted, I love it personally when we play Eastern. I do because it's a game you have to win. It's Apple Cup early in the season. You lose that game and you go play Apple Cup, it doesn't matter how well you do. You lost to Eastern. And I told that to my friends at Wazoo. I was like, don't lose this game. Don't lose it. Because win or lose at Apple Cup, if you lost to Eastern, we're going to make fun of you. And for them, that's more of a rivalry game for them because I want to say Eastern is only a couple of hours outside of Pullman.
Right. Well, and another thing, actually to add on to that, when Central was making their run at the national title, we almost beat Montana.
Right.
And that was considered, the small schools. I think as we talked about last time, the small schools love to play the role of the underdog.
Yeah, because they have nothing to lose.
Exactly.
They have nothing to lose. We're playing, and for some, at least for the underclassmen, it's also a chance to kind of re-show, the Division I schools, like, hey, you passed up on this, but there's still a chance that, hey, someone say, hey, why don't you come over and play on our side?
Right.
Like you may not be a starter, but you'll still get a little bit of playing time. You won't be a feature back. You'll be, a third and fourth down. We'll put you on special teams. Hey, you've got a great 40 time. Hey, you want to catch some punts and kicks? Great. It'll give them a chance to kind of re-audition for that big school for that one day.
Well, and another thing to add on to that too, when I was interviewing Coach Glenn Bennett from Central, he would always say the reason why the games, unfortunately, the older games against Western Washington were so important was not necessarily because of the rivalry, because of the rah-rah, the school spirit, and what you just said, but also because of recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
If
big recruiting.
Yeah. So, but I believe that the non-conference season for the Dogs next year is a little tougher compared with maybe the exception of the Idaho State game.
Yeah.
But they do have to play Boise State, and then they play Illinois on the road or at a neutral site,
but on the road.
On the road. So. But my expectations...
They're still playing in Chicago.
Yeah. My expectations for the Dogs next year is, get that 8 win the bowl game, and then also win Apple Cup. And normally, I would say just get 8 wins, but at this point, I want to see Sarkisian's team.
I would like to see them finish higher in their half of the Pac-12 too. Yeah. I would like to see them get to third place. Again, the Pac-12 North is Oregon's half to lose. They are
Stanford.
Stanford
won though.
Stanford, that's true. That is true. I mean, it's okay. We'll say it's Stanford and it's Oregon. I mean, but we beat Stanford.
That is true.
That's another thing to look at. So I mean, it's definitely. But I feel that Oregon is still the team to beat, despite the fact that their coach is leaving. The offense isn't going anywhere because knowing Oregon and knowing the University of Nike, they're going to stick to what works. Plain and simple. They will. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, you can wear all the goofy uniforms you want as long as you keep winning.
Can't you just be green and gold and have the stupid duck on the side with Can we just do that?
I remember back in the day they didn't have the duck; they had the UO.
That's also a good one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big dispute with Disney, believe it.
Oh yeah. I remember that. So
I mean, it's those are my expectations for the Dogs, and we'll be back with a little Central Washington here in a minute.
All right.